The modern villain lacks depth. The problem with films being elevated to a larger scale with world-ending stories with slow-motion friendly heroes is that the villains serve to simply be an obstacle in the hero's path. With the advent of superhero films or spy films, even ones like Dhurandhar, villains simply exist to spew hateful violence and have these grand world domination plans that ultimately will run into the wall that is our hero. These are not the ones that scare us because we can't really relate to that. A great villain is where we can connect with their motive. Like you can see why they were tipped over the edge. And in my opinion, there is no greater villain in the last 2 decades than Langda Tyagi in Omkara. Omkara in general is a fascinating film because even though it isn't the first Shakespeare adaptation by Vishal Bhardwaj, it bridged the gap between the actors that were labeled as parallel cinema actors and the mainstream actors. Taking people like Konkana Sen Sharma, Deepak Dobriyal, Pankaj Tripathi, Nazruddin Shah, and having them act with mainstream stars like Saif Ali Khan, Ajay Devgan, Kareena Kapoor, and Bipasha Basu. In an interview that Saif did with Anupama Chopra reflecting on the film, he said that he believes if the film would have worked, if it had been viewed financially as a successful experiment, it could have changed the landscape of Indian cinema. And I do believe that if money had followed the rave reviews, it would have definitely led to people making braver decisions in the mainstream. Braver decisions like taking urban rom-com hero Saif Ali Khan and having him embody someone as heinous as Langda Tyagi. And I do think he stands the test of time, even if it is not backed with commercial success, but as a landmark villain. Not because of an air of invincibility or his ability to match his hero's slow-motion antics or his convoluted scheme to take over the world, but because he's a mirror that only reflects the worst of ourselves back to us. Now, obviously, Langda Tyagi is taken from Iago, one of Shakespeare's great villains. But set in the rustic lands of Uttar Pradesh, I think Langda and Omkara is a symptom of the regressive society here. The caste discrimination, the obsession with the fair skin, the deep-rooted misogyny, and a penchant for violence, all of it spitting out this man who has a permanent poisonous chip on his shoulder. He channels it to cut deep whenever necessary. This is seen at the start as he sits on a cliff with the could-have-been husband of Dolly, played by Deepak Dobriyal, framing his plight to him as something that is inevitable. Langda Tyagi is the embodiment of the rhetorical question, what will people say? Letting the paranoia that follows that do its bidding. But when it came to Omkara, he never would have channeled that venom towards the man if it wasn't for a decision that Omkara made. And that's what makes him a compelling villain. A motive that rings true. For Langda, the public humiliation that he faces after years of loyal service to his leader is a turning point. A powerful scene by Omkara in the coronation ceremony of his successor picks Kesu, a younger man who is a new addition to Omkara's gang. He does so by walking past Langda, leaving him stunned that he wasn't picked. And then Langda has to trudge over to that cliff to address a crowd that's waiting in collective bated breath. And he has to announce that Kesu Firangi was chosen. His arms are even unable to stay up in jubilation. Firstly, you would think as friends for years, Omkara would have done him the courtesy to have that conversation in private and be like, hey, look, I know that I said it would be you, but I'm going to pick Kesu because he appeals to the demographic. It's not a personal decision. It's an election thing to garner more young votes. Well, that would have definitely still hurt, and Langda would have maybe still gone on the warpath. I think the extra sting of being blindsided didn't help. For anyone viewing that, you would definitely understand him being upset. So his frustrations resonate. There's a great moment after he gets home, the night the announcement has been made, and he stands in front of the mirror, shatters the glass with his hand, and with his bloodied hand, he covers his head with blood, the same way that Omkara applied tilak on Kesu's head. The path to the top, the path to being Bahubali is clear for Langda. Bloodshed. Another marker of a great villain is the jeopardy that he seems to pose to the hero, which feels insurmountable. Physically, Langda Tyagi is no match for Omkara. On top of everything else, he has a limp and he relies on his aim to overcome this in combat. But he isn't competing with him on that level. He isn't interested in winning that way. If you look back at the manner in which Omkara handled the coronation, one thing is clear. He's not a man of many words and he doesn't communicate well. Langda uses that to his advantage. He is aware that Omkara will never voice his true feelings, letting them fester and grow inside him. He also knows that the line between fact and fiction is very thin, and you can convince people easily that there wasn't a line to begin with. And if he does that, he knows that Omkara will become his own worst enemy. The film starts with a not-so-subtle foreshadowing of Omkara's downfall. A seed of doubt is planted even before the title appears on screen. Omkara, with the help of Kesu and Langda, is able to abduct Dolly from a wedding, something that she wanted as well. Omkara is then told by Dolly's father, "How can you trust a woman that would betray her own father?" It was never going to end in anything but tragedy. So when Kesu is appointed Bahubali, Langda begins to exploit that seed that was planted by the father to grow into a field of doubt. What makes the character of Omkara interesting is the presentation of him. He is a mythical figure in his own right. He is the kind of superhero-esque gangster, the kind of person that you tell stories about. Even the title track of Omkara feels like a bedtime story that you tell your kid at night, be careful, otherwise Omkara will come. The way that it is sung feels like a folk song. The cadence of it, the lyrics of it, talking about the grandeur, the mythology of the man. And in that lies a need to maintain that image, that lore, at whatever the cost may be. Omkara cannot be a man that his wife cheats on. He cannot be seen as a lesser man. And if he is, then there will be hell to pay. Langda knows that his pride will lead to him being unable to stand the idea that the love of his life would betray him. And that comes from what? The very idea that it is possible. Her dad's words echoing in his ear. The real Omkara is one that is wounded by his perception, by his appearance, and the fact that he may not be good enough for Dolly. The man behind the myth is one laden with insecurities that he hides with anger and violence. We see this early on when a local politician's goon mocks Omkara's relationship with Dolly. He loses his head and kills them, announcing to the villagers that his love is real. Langda, who is privy to this, is aware that this is a sticking point for the Bahubali. But he doesn't immediately poke the bear. Instead, he uses a symbol of Omkara's love for Dolly, a kamarband or a waistband that he gifted her, to carve out a path of destruction. The kamarband becomes a physical manifestation of what is a confirmation bias. It is passed from one person to the next in the film, creating a narrative that, when flipped on its head, when examined out of context, would confirm to our protagonist that there was an affair between Kesu and Dolly. Langda hovers over every shoulder, providing them intrusive thoughts that he packages as solutions. He creates a domino effect of horror, nudging them all along. He is a man carefully plotting coincidence, exploiting people's traits to drive them head-on into terrible happenstance. And he uses the kamarband to document these actions, so that when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the scene of the crime, the culprit has their fingerprints all over it. A symbol of love and affection is now evidence of crime. The kamarband was stolen by Langda's wife Indu on his instruction. He then gave it to Kesu, who gives it to his lover Billo. And the reason Kesu gives it to Billo in the first place was to help Omkara, is to help him catch whoever attacked his boss. Kesu does it for Omkara, but because of Langda being in his ear, every good deed is wrapped in the kamarband and is cloaked in mistrust. Every good intention has been yanked away from its context and leads to the worst miscommunication. There is nothing that scares us more than being misunderstood so profoundly, and Langda is the embodiment of that, making him one of the most terrifying and frustrating villains to watch. He wraps all of people's worst fears and sells them as truth. And that's what anxiety is, right? It makes you believe a reality that doesn't exist, that maybe the people in your life that you love don't care for you, that if something good is happening, bad is just lurking around the corner. Langda Tyagi is that whisper in the dead of the night, that voice in your head. There's a feeling that he isn't even real. He's like Omkara's alter ego, an amalgamation of every worst instinct that rears his head anytime he thinks he's settling into something good. That all Langda is, like I said before, the reflection of the mirror where you only see the worst of yourself. I always rewatch Omkara the same way, with the hope that maybe this time, if he looks long enough in Dolly's eyes, he won't believe Langda's warped tale. That maybe this time love prevails, but it doesn't. And by the time Omkara has shaken off the fog, by the time the truth has been re-injected by Indu, exposing Langda for the cancer that he is, Dolly is already dead. And even though Langda loses his life, it's way too late. He was right about society, about the thread between fact and fiction being cut by our worst selves. And that's what makes him such a great villain. Thank you for watching this video. Do like, share, and subscribe, all of that good stuff. And let me know in the comments, what is your favorite Bollywood villain? Also, let me know any other topics you'd like me to do a deep dive of.